All right. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Okay. All right. Let me talk about a couple of things real quick. Here we go. I've gotten quite a few messages the last week or so about a couple of things. Um, one question that I've gotten asked quite a bit, is about the difference between extended practicum and practicum 3. So let me talk about that really quickly. Um, the practicum 3 is only for MFT students. So if you're going the LPC route, you don't have to worry about taking practicum 3. Um, the extended practicum is only for those students that wish to continue seeing clients while they wait for either take their exam or wait for their associate license. And so you would take extended practicum if you want to do that. Not everybody does. Some people take a break after this practicum and don't see clients and just either take the exam or wait for their associate license and then pick back up when they get their associate license. So it's not a mandatory class. The class itself, the extended practicum class itself, is very straightforward. You've already graduated. You're just using it to see clients, maybe at a site that you're going to work at, um, while you start gathering your hours. So those are a couple of questions that I got that I wanted to talk about right off the bat. Um, you would register just like it's a regular class. Um, you would still pay for it just like a regular class. I actually run the class, but it's very hands off just because basically you're most of the students that take it now are just waiting for their associate license. My understanding of the associate license, I actually talked to a couple of former students within the last month. It seems like they're processing those requests fairly quickly, which is good. Um, and so I don't think you're waiting, you used to wait 6 or 8 weeks for your license. I don't think it's nearly that long at all anymore. I think you're getting your associate license fairly quickly now. So that was one big question. The second big question was just about paperwork in the paper and things like that. Um, uh, on Moodle at the very under the week 9 through 15, I've got places for you to upload your reflection paper, just supervisor evaluation, your self evaluation, your practicum hours report, and then I've got a place for the QEAP reflection paper. Like I said, the very first class, that paper is not mandatory. They just ask for that paper. So that's not, if you don't do it, that's fine. It doesn't hurt you in any way. That's just something that the QEP folks have asked for. Um, and so you can turn in any of those, the paper, the supervision, the hours, you can turn any of those in at any point. You can just upload them. Um, I do want, when you turn in your practicum hours, I do want the total, like all the hours you've done, practicum 1 and 2. I want the full 300 hours there. um, Last semester, some people had some trouble uploading them. Um, I, I think for the most part, it should be fine. If you have trouble uploading them, please let me know, because I can always take them. Uh, I can take them via like email too. I would rather have them uploaded. That's the first choice. I'd rather not have a bunch of them emailed to me because I get like 30 emails every day and it just gets to be a little bit crazy. So, okay. Those are the big things that people have messaged me about that I wanted to talk about. Now, Teresa's got her hand up, so I'm going to pause for a second.
I wanted to ask a question about the extended practicum. One thing I read is something about including the hours onto, it said something about like after we get 300 hours, we can count the rest of those out or count more hours for your license. Is that correct? I don't
Um,
remember where, I think it's when
that's
I was registering.
I don't
I read.
believe I don't believe that's correct. I'm not sure
Okay.
where you would have seen that. Yeah, you will not be able to count any of your practicum hours towards licensure, towards your associate license.
Okay, actually, I do see where it was. It was actually on the website. Um, when I clicked on extended practicum, because I was actually just registered for it, so that way I can continue seeing some of my clients. And it said the Board of Professional Counseling allows a student to accrue up to 400 hours towards his or her internship after they have completed the 300-hour practicum requirement.
Okay. Are- What are you on the Amerton website or
Yes,
okay?
on the
Uh,
Amberton website.
let me check into that because I don't know if that's accurate.
Okay.
Um, it's not going to stop you from what you're doing.
No, but I
Um,
was thinking you had said, just continue to kind of keep up with your hours,
mhm, just in case,
anyways, in
yeah.
case they change it. But I was just
Mhm.
wondering if that was something recent that happened because I didn't know that that was a possibility yet.
Yeah, I'm going to send a message to the executive director of
Okay.
the board and I'll find out for sure.
Okay, great.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, that's a great question. To my knowledge, that hasn't changed, but like I've said, that some things will change, you, but it sounds like, Teresa, what you're saying though, like in terms of just seeing clients, you've already
Mhm.
registered, so you're going to see clients no matter what. I mean, it's great if you could use those hours towards licensure. That's awesome if that happens. Yeah, but I'll find out. I'll find that out by tomorrow. I'll know, and I'll send out a message to everybody. That'll be easy to find out. I haven't seen anything about it recently, but let me double check. Any other questions about any of those things?
I have a question.
Yep.
First one, you said the QEP paper is not required. We don't have to do that.
Nope.
Okay, good to know. I just wanted to verify that. And then secondly, do you know, are there rules about once you are licensed, if your hours are online versus in person, does it matter? Can you accumulate those 3,000 hours by doing online counseling, or does it have to be in person or?
Yeah, you can. Uh, I don't know if there's a. I know the MFT board just made some changes to telehealth. My suggestion would be now what I'm about to say. What I would do is I would go on the LPC, go on the BHEC site and look at the rules for telehealth. There'll be a telehealth section in the rules there.
Mhm.
So any changes or anything that they have will be listed there. I don't think that there's like a cap on doing telehealth work. I don't think that there is. I'm not 100% sure, but I've not really read anything or seen anything that they're capping that right now. But I would just go in and read the board rules about it, and it shouldn't be too hard to find. You should be able to find it pretty quickly because it'll telehealth typically has its own section in all the rules, LMFT and the LPC rules. They'll have their own section there. Um, your supervisor, whoever you have as a supervisor moving forward, they should know that too. Like they should
Okay.
be aware. I know the LMFT side because I'm actually starting to supervise people on the LMFT side. There's no stipulation about it, so it's no big deal. Um,
Okay. So you could potentially, I mean, because I'm just looking at, jobs that might be all
right,
online counseling.
right,
Okay.
right. So potentially you could do it all online.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Christy, the practice that I'm doing my practicum in, it's exclusively telehealth, and there's a lot of associates that are there getting their hours. So I don't think that's the case either. You can do it pretty much the whole 3,000 or
yeah.
1,500, I guess, or
I don't,
15.
I mean, yeah, honestly, it'd be stupid on their part to not let you guys do that. I mean, that's just the future. That's where things are going. So I've been virtual for like almost 5 years. So that's that's definitely the future. So Eric, how many are you, Eric, the people in your practice like associates and fully licensed, like everybody is virtual or can be
Yeah,
virtual?
most of us are practicum, and then there's like four associates, and they're 100%
Yeah.
telehealth. So,
Yeah. Gotcha.
yep.
Yeah. The one thing to remember is you have to, as far as I know right now, you have to still be in Texas, and your clients have to be in Texas for now. Um, I mean, you can get your license in other states moving forward, but your clients would have to be in Texas um, in order to see them. So that's a whole. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit tonight, but that's kind of that's also important too.
Well, and I have a question about that actually, because previously I've done some coaching. So how
Totally
do I
different.
balance that when I get
Yeah,
licensed?
yeah,
Do I
totally
just make
different.
sure that I bill it and call it coaching when it's
Yeah,
coaching?
it's totally different. Coaching and therapy and counseling is not the same. Coaching doesn't have really any rules or regulations to it. Therapy, counseling have tons of
Mhm.
restrictions on that. So if you're doing therapy or counseling with someone, they have to be within the state that you're licensed. If you're coaching someone, they could be anywhere in the world, technically. There's no regulations for coaching.
Okay.
I think that's probably going to change.
I do.
New Jersey changed their rule about 3 years ago. That's going to change eventually, but right now it's not an issue. As long as you have to be very specific though, and you have to have totally different sets of paperwork, right? So you have to have two totally different contracts or sets of paperwork that they sign or that they are aware of. You can't, in other words, you can't cross mingle those. It has to be very clear what you're doing.
So sorry, I have a lot of questions on this. So the
Okay.
1,500 of direct hours and then 1,500 are indirect. So does that include like conferences or
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
any kind of like PESI training or you can,
Yep.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
And just like what we're doing now, anything you do now, you can get credit for it. Yeah, pretty much everything you do that's related to the counseling, the practice of counseling counts.
I mean, would that include like reading books and
Everything. Yeah,
okay,
everything.
awesome. So that's an easier 1,500 to get. It's the direct
The
there.
the non-direct should be the easiest thing you'll do.
Okay. And do you know, like, if we postponed, like the NCE, so I've taken the NCE and that's good for like a period of time, correct? Like I don't
Mhm.
have to apply for licensure immediately. If I wanted to wait to start work until like March, could I wait so that my
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, you can. You can apply for your licensure anyway. Anytime doesn't mean you have to start using it.
Okay.
You can always apply, but I think I feel like it's a 5 year. But if you're just waiting until March, that's not going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, now that I know I can do telehealth, I have a daughter at home still, so I was not
Mhm.
wanting to work in person, but doing it
Yeah,
in telehealth hours, I'd start now.
yeah.
I also wanted to let you know that the practicum site that I was at is looking to hire a counselor. So, if anybody's looking for a job.
Okay, awesome. I like your hat too. I went to ACU. I have 3 degrees from there.
Really? Yeah, my
Yeah,
son went.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah. I've spent a lot of money there.
Me too.
Yep. Any other questions?
I wanted to ask Christy, how did you feel about the NCE compared to the CPCE? Because I'm taking the NCE on Saturday and I'm scared.
Well, I do think it's easier. I did a lot better on the NCE.
Oh, that's good to know.
I did. I do think it's easier, but you will feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know so many of these.
Hmm.
How I felt. So don't stress about it. Just keep going.
Okay.
you'll probably end up passing if you studied. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how I felt on the CPCE. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing that portfolio because I know I didn't pay. And then I got my score. I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah, I thought it was easier. I didn't think there was
Good.
like extremely bizarre, like,
Yeah.
statistical questions like there were on the CPCE. It was more
Okay.
forward, but there were a lot of questions that I was like, well, I don't think it'll be this one or this one.
Yeah.
Um, but
On purpose. They do that on
Thanks.
purpose.
yeah,
Good to know. Thank you.
There's other people here that have passed it, right? Well, I know we have people in the class that have already passed it for sure.
yeah, I don't know. I just took it October 17th, but I found out the day I took it. I mean, I walked out and they handed me the
Yeah,
thing and it said I passed.
yeah. Our pass rate's almost 80%. So you're gonna, yeah. If you study at all, you should be fine.
I took a Wellspring Review prep course, but I gotta say, I don't think it helped much. And I studied, but I passed, and honestly, it's not as bad as a lot of people think.
Good.
Yeah, I just did the whatever his name is, Rosenthal. I did the
Purple
purple book,
book.
but the orange book was really, I bought it on Audible. It's his lectures, and I just listened to him in the car everywhere I went. And that actually helped me more than the purple book because I didn't even have to sit down and look at it. I could, go for a walk with the dogs. I just had it in my ears constantly for about 60 days.
Yeah.
I've
Good.
done the purple book, and then Mometrics has really good practice exams, like with 200 questions. There's 7 practice exams or practice tests with 200 questions. They've been really helpful. And then when you get them wrong, they kind of give you explanation whenever you finish it. So that's been really helpful also, if
Good.
anybody's looking for additional study material.
My guess is if you've done all that, you're going to do fine, Eric.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else taking it soon? Soonish? Okay. Any other questions about any of the things we were talking about so far?
I turned in my hours today,
Okay.
but I didn't know to include practicum one, so I just need to readjust it and send another sheet to you that has my hours.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So you want the one that the front sheet?
I want
The top,
every hour you guys have ever done.
can I just write it down on a paper, or do you want it on that one sheet that has
But
direct hours, total, that kind of, you had a breakdown on practicum one and two.
yeah, whatever you turn into Dr. Johnson, I'd
Yeah.
like to get that. If I'm making assumptions that you guys would have kept copies of those, hopefully.
Sure I did. Yeah, I just have to get my hand on them.
Yeah. The reason is because I need all the hours because I need to see that you finished. So practicum 2 is like the finish line.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. If y'all want to add them all up for me, that's even better.
Okay.
The way I turned mine in last time, like I had my supervisor, like I put the total on that front sheet, and they signed it and then attached the Excel because I keep all my hours
Yeah.
in an Excel file
Mhm.
with direct, indirect. It has a total for each, and
Yeah.
that's how I turned it in last time.
That's fine. I don't care if it's
Okay.
on Excel or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I would suggest you guys use like an Excel or Google Sheet or something like that because you're going to accumulate a ton of hours here now. So you need to have something that's pretty robust. So I would suggest starting to do that anyway. But as long as y'all can turn in everything you've done, it doesn't matter to me the format necessarily. Um,
Okay.
um, you guys are a little unlucky. We're about to start making this electronic. So we're going to start keeping everything electronically. So it's going to make it a little bit easier to keep track. Honestly, I've started using most of the Google suite, like Google Sheets, for example. because you can take it everywhere you go. You can always update it. If there's an app for it, you can have on your phone. I highly recommend that, and it's free. Microsoft started charging for like Excel, which is so stupid to me when Google's free. It basically does the same stuff. That's a super easy way. There's apps now you can have on your phone too to collect hours. Um, but I would definitely start, get a system in place as you start collecting hours for sure. Because 3,000 hours is just a lot of hours.
Has anybody done, or do you know, has anybody done their jurisprudence exam or the sex trafficking, the other two requirements?
I've done both.
Okay, was it, you
Yeah.
just go on the METC site, it's pretty straightforward?
The jurisprudence exam is like you have to make 100%, and if you get the answer wrong, it'll tell you, and then you just select the right answer.
You can't fail it.
Yep.
So there's
And then the sex trafficking course is super easy.
okay,
Yeah,
so just get online and do it. You don't have to do anything beforehand.
Nope.
No. No. You guys have to do fingerprints for your license. I'm assuming you will.
I think you get them after you apply for the LPCA.
Hmm.
That's what I read, like in the directions to apply for it, that the board would send you
Yeah.
your fingerprint directions.
Yeah, they'll send you instructions on where to go, and yeah, it's just a little bit of a pain. It's not hard to do, but there's only specific places you can go. Basically, that's just part of they put that into the FBI database. It's basically just a protection for clients. So that's kind of newish within the last like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, we have to do the same thing as a teacher, do something like that. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Bedard, what platform do you use for your virtual counseling?
Well, I have a business agreement with Zoom, so I use Zoom for some clients, but then I work with another company that has their own platform that I use with them. I've used multiple different ones. DoxyMe is another one, but it's not very stable, I don't think. BC is another one, but I don't think it's very stable. Zoom is the most stable probably platform. And then I've used Simple Practices platform too, and it's okay. I prefer Zoom just because I'm used to it, but I have a business agreement with them, so that makes it HIPAA compliant. Like this tonight, I don't know if y'all noticed, but it says like business Zoom or whatever on the front. So that's what I use, but I know there's probably other things out there now.
So
But
is that more expensive, I'm assuming, than a regular Zoom? Because I've been doing coaching on Zoom for a while, just a regular Zoom account, but I'm guessing I'll need to upgrade it for private clients.
yeah, I think I pay $150 a year or something like that. It's not that bad.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Okay.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I use my own. I think Amberton's got an account, but I just use my own just because it's easier. I've already got everything loaded on it, so it's just much easier. Like last ditch, like if I have to do a phone call, I will, but most of the time, like 99% of the time, I'm on video. You can do Google Meet too if you do their business suite. You can do Google Meet as well, and that's Google Meet's pretty good too. All right. Any other questions about any of those things? Okay, cool. Tonight I want to talk about a couple of things. Um, one of the things that I learned early on in my own practice as I was graduating and then setting up my own practice, is that I didn't know anything about like running a business. Or I mean, I knew I charged people and I knew I could keep track of hours, and I mean, I knew some things, but there's so many things I did not know. Um, I didn't even really talk to people that much, and one of the down one of the downsides of most master's programs that I know of in terms of counseling or therapy is there's very little time to talk about the business side of counseling, mainly because we have certain classes that everyone has to take because of state, you know, licensure. And so you have a 60-hour degree program. There's really no way to slip in something about, not just private practice, but like being a W-2 or a 1099 employee, or what that looks like, and things like that. Or how do you even start a practice, or, what's the talking about the business side of what we do. And so I made a lot of mistakes early on, and luckily found the right people to talk to. One of those was Chris Kendall. I put that recording of the interview I did with him. It's still online. If you guys want to watch that, it's a couple of hours long. It's really good. Um, he's been very helpful for me. And then since then, I've been able to kind of streamline some things for myself, and it's been really helpful. But one of the things that I wanted to do in this class is talk more openly about not just the clinical side of working with people, because that's important. And that's what you guys have been focused on, this whole time, but also talk about the business side of working with people. And so um, I want to talk about that I'm gonna just go over a couple of things really quickly. Some of these are just from my experience, but then some of these are just, hey, here's some things to think about. Um, I will say up front that some tax type laws have definitely changed in the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm probably not going to be as well versed in all of those things. I can give you super broad, generic, like um, general things to think about for sure, as you head down into the kind of the business side. But one of the things that usually, or at least most of the time, is hard for all of us as we come out and start working with people is this kind of division between, hey, I'm working with someone clinically, but I'm also charging someone, or I'm going to charge X amount of money for this service. Um, and that sometimes makes people feel a little bit weird to do that. Um, the way I look at it is basically when people sign up for therapy or counseling or even coaching, really, they're signing up for something very specific. They're signing up for a service that you provide. They're signing up for a service you provide that they can't get anywhere else. So that service itself is made up of a few things. The service that you're giving them is made up of your experience in life, for sure, your education, and whatever licensing exam you've taken to be licensed, and the supervision that you're receiving. So you're actually offering somewhat of like an expertise in an area that they don't have, which is why they're coming to you. So you're not selling a friendship or relationship, or you're selling a service that they need. Um, and that's kind of helped me with pricing my service or asking for people to pay for that service. Um, and so that's the first thing to kind of think about. The second thing, right now in the therapy counseling world, there are plenty of resources out there about building a business, what that takes, what that looks like. When I first started, there was no information about any of these things. Matter of fact, in 2012, 13, 14, no, 2013 and 14, the place that I was working at, me and one of the people, the owner of that place, we decided to put together some research, and we presented our research, and we presented just like, hey, here's some building blocks for building a practice. We presented it at a conference in the state. This was in, like I said, I think it was actually in 2014 when we presented. We were the only people that's ever done that. And now there's like every conference, there's probably one, two, three people that are presenting something about private practice. I mean, there's lots of information out there now about it. There's books about it. People are writing about it. You can definitely take classes about it and seminars and pay people a lot of money to help them coach you through how to do it. I mean, there's lots of information out there now, which is not bad. That's a good thing. But you do have to pay attention to the information that you're getting. You just have to be mindful of it. The main part of what I want to talk about tonight is just some basic, super basic things. When you start out on your own, it does help you to have or develop kind of an entrepreneurial mindset of, hey, I'm selling the service. I'm selling me, but I'm selling the service. And so what's the best way to do that? Does that mean I need to find a niche? Like these are the types of clients I know I'm probably going to work with. Are you very general? In other words, you'll kind of take any client that comes along, but you practice in a certain way. I've got a few colleagues that take kind of more of a general, they take adults and teens but their model of therapy is very specific. I've got other colleagues that are pretty specific with the types of clients they take, but they can use multiple models. And so you can do it any way you want. And my suggestion is always when you first start is, and I think I mentioned this maybe in the first class, I think it's always wise to just try different models anyway. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You can try to kind of find, what works best for you. Just remember that as you're going along, as you're building a practice, it just takes time. Anywhere from 18 to 24 months to really build a practice. And that's because, it's a very slow kind of slog through. I've built 3 practices. The last one I built when I was in Keller didn't take me as long as the first 2 because I brought a bunch of clients with me when I moved from the place I was at before. And so that was good. I personally have never advertised, but now there's plenty of ways to advertise. There's plenty of ways to get your name out there. And there's plenty of people that use TikTok as a forum or Instagram as forums now. I mean, there's Dr. Armstrong's actually got a pretty good TikTok channel now that he's been kind of developing over time. So there's lots of ways you can actually get your name out there for sure, 100%, and let people see who you are and kind of get a feel for who you are and things like that. That part's actually getting easier and easier, I think, to do. And so that's a good thing. But I think what's important for you guys to think about at the beginning is, okay, here's the model I'm going to try to work on, or these models that I'm going to try to work on. And as I'm working with people, am I thinking, I kind of want to do a niche. I kind of want to work with these types of folks. And that could be anything, and that could be any type of client. But if you start, I think it does help for you to start thinking in an entrepreneurial type of way. So let me give you an example of that. That just for what I've done, this is not what everyone can do. I was in the church world before I got into the therapy world, so I try to leverage that when I first started. And so I would just kind of network with churches. That's what I did at the beginning, and that helped me a lot. As I've gone forward, I've actually my whole practice kind of morphed into mainly working with couples the last like 5 years. And so I've actually worked with a church or 2 on like their marriage ministry. So kind of a niche for me was like to kind of help with that. And I would kind of like be like a consultant in that way with them to just try to help with some things that they were working on. So that worked for me. That was something that was helpful for me. Now I've morphed again into working with a lot of employee assistance programs where I mainly work with folks with high anxiety high stress, and I kind of really work with individuals mostly now for the most part. And so you can morph yourself a couple of different ways. And then I've got colleagues that were either in a practice or started a practice, and that's all they've done for the last 10 or 15 years. So you can do it that way too. There's multiple ways to go. Um, you don't have to be, set in one place. And I'm only bringing up one or two different avenues. There's going to be other avenues that you guys can think of as you move forward. But being an entrepreneur, I think, really helps. I don't even think it's a bad idea to take a class on entrepreneurship. I think actually Amerton's about to start teaching some of those courses. I don't think that's a bad idea personally. I think it can be very helpful for you. Networking with people is always super helpful. I think face-to-face networking is still the best way to go. I did something a little bit out of the box when I first started. I networked with a lot of hair salons in the area, and I got a lot of clients from that, besides churches. And I had some colleagues that I worked with that worked with kids, so they went to pediatric practices in the area. They got on lists of like most school systems have lists of therapists that they recommend to. You can get on those lists. I went to every, like, if there was like a community, like one of the ISDs I worked in, they had uh, a big showcase of like all the services that they use. I signed up and went there with put a table there and met people that way. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can get your name out there and get involved in your community, in doing that. And then there's the kind of traditional like Psychology Today ads that you can create an ad and get on Psychology Today. I think that's super easy to do. That's only like $30 a month, which is not very much, for you. And actually, they've kept that same price. I don't think they've ever gone up in the price since I started on it. That was a long time ago. And you can get on that as an associate too. So those are things just to think about as you kind of move forward. Some people might want to jump into that private practice life sooner than others, and that's fine. You can do it at your own speed. There's no set way to do this. You can kind of do it how, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. The other thing I wanted to talk about, really quickly, is like in terms of next steps for any of you that are going to work like in a private practice or a clinic, or work in any place that does any kind of counseling. There's basically a couple of different ways, like two different main ways that counseling practices are run. The most popular way is like an owner operator type of practice, where there is an owner or maybe a group of owners that you work for them, and you either contract or you are full time with them, and you get paid a percentage of the fee that you charge, and then that ownership gets a percentage of that fee. So let's say it's 60/40 or 70/30 or whatever that is. You charge X. Sometimes those practices actually tell you what you charge. I'm going to use $100 just because it's easy math. You charge $100, you keep 60 and they get 40, or you keep 80 and they get 20. That's actually really rare. You keep 70, they get 30, that type thing. That's pretty common in the counseling world, especially in the associate world. A little bit less common when you get your full license, but as you go into your associate world, that's fairly common.
Can I ask you a question about that really quick?
Sure.
So if I were to get my own client, and so like, because I've already talked to someone about that kind of a deal, which to me sounded like it's a referral fee almost, because if you get your clients from them and then you're giving them a kickback out of what you get instead of paying rent, I wondered how ethically that wasn't a problem. But that is common, like a 70/30, 60/40 split. But if I get my own client and it didn't get the client from the owner and I do it on Zoom, like that's like a separate private practice, right? Like I can do that on my own at the same time that I'm doing clients with them. Does that make sense?
It does. I think you have to be careful if you have a non-compete in your contract,
Okay.
with that practice that you're working with, and you also have to make sure that your supervisor is okay with that as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
Because that's what because can't you kind of like build your own practice while you're working for someone else at the same time? I guess what you're saying is make sure you don't have a non-compete.
So you have to make sure and be careful, because if your owner doesn't like that, they might not want you at their practice.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. The 40% you're giving to them, or the 30% you're giving them, you definitely want to find out what that means. Is that free supervision? Is that for marketing? Is that for admin? Is that what, like, how many clients am I going to get out of this? That all of that percentage goes towards that. It goes towards their operating costs. And so as an owner, obviously they want to make money too. So that's part of that percentage, you're always going to have some kind of operating cost. That ownership model is probably the most popular, I would say. Usually that's kind of how it works. There's another type of model that I've been a part of too, where it's like a cost share model. Let's say that all of us here on this call right now decided we wanted to start a practice, and everyone here was going to see a different type of client, and we're going to call it whatever, Amerton Counseling Center. I don't know, I'm just making that up. Amerton Counseling Center, and we're all going to be part of it, and we're going to share the costs. Everyone here is going to pay $1,000 a month, and that will pay for all the costs that we need, and then everything else we keep, let's say. And that might end up only being like 10 or 12% of what you make, that $1,000. That type of cost sharing ownership or practice, that is out there. I was a part of one of those, and I really like that a lot. Because we all pay like X amount, and the more people that join the practice, that cost goes down a little bit. So that's something that's out there too. When you go to wherever you end up working, most of the time you're going to sign a contract. You need to read the contract. You need to know what's in it. You need to know what they're asking, and whatever percentage you're giving them, you need to know what that percentage goes towards. And they should be able to tell you what it goes towards. And so this is where it's up to you to decide, am I okay with, a 60-40 split, or, most people are okay with it as you start out. When you get your license, that's a different conversation. That's something you would think about later. But this is the most common approach, or these are the most common ways that people get paid. Now, if you go and work for, let's say, an eating disorder center, because we've had students that work at Eating Resource Center in Plano. They get a couple of different places, but at the ERC, we've had some students work there. That's a totally different thing. Most time you're going to be a full-time employee, and if you're contracted, it might be a little different. But like if you work for like a facility like that, or if you work at like an MHMR, let's say, or a place like those places, a lot of times you might actually be a full-time person getting your license. I've had friends that worked at MHMR in Denton County, Dallas County, and Tarrant County, and they did full-time, and they got their license really quick because you see a lot of people in those types of facilities. There's actually a chiropractor school, Parker University. I think it's in North Dallas. They actually hire counselors full-time for their students. So there's places like that out there that you can find that will hire you full-time, even as an associate, and you can get your hours there. So you just have to be kind of creative with how you find what you're looking for. I recently read, this was within the last month, that our world, our mental health world, is going to explode by about 20% in the next 10 to 15 years. That's a lot. So we're going to grow our mental health world, the counselors and therapy world, is going to grow in terms of need by around 20%, which means there's going to be a need for a lot more of us, probably in lots of different other types of places. So that's actually a good thing. That's actually good news for us. And so those are just a couple of things to think about as you kind of start to find, the place you're going to be, and kind of next steps. Let me take a step back because I just talked for
Dr.
really
Bedard,
quickly.
can I offer like a third
experience as far as like how the cost sharing goes.
Sure.
I'm working at, I have two sites, but one is a church counseling center. And they do an hourly office rental.
Yeah.
So like I'm allowed to set my prices, but everybody pays the same amount to use the room, which, I'm making less than the 60-40 split
Yeah.
because the cost is low for a student. But that's just something that I didn't know about until I found them as a practicum site and they explained to me this is how they do it. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to share that in case anybody runs into it, it might be out there for you.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of different ones out there. There's going to be a lot more. I think everyone's going to have a lot more opportunities. I really do moving forward. Hospital systems are hiring LPCs. The VA is hiring people. Churches hire people. I've got a really good friend that started a counseling practice in a church in College Station, but it's actually expanded to more of the public. And he's actually helped a couple of different places start practices. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there. You just kind of have to find them and be, look for them. And a lot of it, honestly, it depends on, how quickly you want to get your license. Maybe some locations get lots of clients and maybe some don't get as many clients. It really depends on how quick you want to move, how quickly you want to get your license. If you're doing the LPC route, it's going to be a little quicker than the LMFT route in general.
If you were working in like a hospital setting, I'm sorry, I'm just like brainstorming because I really want to try to start a private practice, but I know that's really hard to do up front. And so, like, could I work at a hospital setting, maybe part-time, and then have a private practice that would be less? Whereas if I worked for someone else's practice, that's going to be more like a non-compete probably. But if you were in a hospital setting, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you can do either one.
Okay.
You can do it either way. I actually had worked at a practice finishing my hour. I only had about 50 hours to get, so I worked at a practice finishing, and then a town like 45 minutes away, I started my own practice closer to where I lived. So you can do both. You just have to be careful with how you're competing.
Gotcha.
Most of the time, if you work for an owner, they own those files too. You don't take those clients with you, or you don't take
Correct.
those files with you.
Right.
So,
So
but that should be in the contract too.
did you would you recommend setting up an LLC pretty much up front and like working with a lawyer from the beginning? Like, how do you do all your?
So this will be the next thing we'll talk about for
Okay.
sure. Let me take a step back. Does anyone else have any questions about any of the things we've talked about so far? I have a tendency to talk really quickly about this and not go slow enough.
I think the one thing I wanted to say, this is from like several minutes ago, but you were talking about like choosing a theory or a method or choosing a client group or whatever. Um, so far, what I've found out is that there are certain people who find me. So I'm kind of letting that shape maybe where I start out. Like it's been a really interesting experience to just find out that the same general type of client is like, oh, Leanne is the person that I want to work with. And now I'm in that really great spot where like they're referring, people they're mostly like, this is no surprise to any of us, but like they're mostly sixth graders. Like
Yeah.
being 12 is really hard. And then, parents of different situations. But I just wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit. Did you ever come across that where it was like more about who kind of sought you out first?
Yeah. So I never advertised. I only advertised on Psychology Today. So I grew everything organically, and I only did it through word of mouth. Every practice I ever built. That's what I did. And so I would get clients referred to me from either other clients or friends of clients or pastors that I knew or friends that I knew. That's how I got all my clients. And for a while, I did have a niche of working with really difficult marriages, like people that had gone through affairs. I did that for about 6 years, and I got kind of inside of that world for a while, and that was actually really intense, and I had to kind of step away from that. Now I've slowed my private practice down way, way, way to like 2 or 3 a week, and I'm still getting like a ton of calls from people, from old clients and old people that I've known for a long time. And so, yes, if you become good at something, just like anything else, right? You become good at something, you help people. People are going to tell them about you. If you become really good at what you do, other people are going to tell them. That's exactly what will happen. Now, some people I work with, it wasn't a fit and it didn't work, and maybe they found someone else. That happens too, and that's fine. Um, I haven't kept every single client I've ever gotten. Sometimes it just doesn't fit very well. The one thing I'll say about models, let me talk about outcome studies really quickly. If we look at outcome studies in terms of results from therapy, what we know is the model that you choose is not as important as you buying into the model that you choose. In other words, if me and Leanne choose 2 different models and work with the same client, we potentially would get very similar results because we really buy into those models. The clients don't know any better, right? They don't know any different. They don't know that we're doing different models. They don't know that necessarily. Well, I take that back. Some people know a little bit more now than they used to, but when you're picking a model, the outcome is going to be pretty much the same no matter what model you choose, as long as you're fully into that model. So it really matters that you just kind of sell out to that model more than anything. And that's why a lot of people kind of, as you go along, you maybe use 1 or 2 or 3 models, or, kind of however you do it. And then you kind of find that what you're good at, and you find out what resonates with you the most, and that's what you do. And as you do that more and more and get better and better at it, you help people more and more, then they're going to come to you more and more. So if you're good at something, it's like Field of Dreams, right? Like if you build it, they will come. If you're good at something, people will find you for sure. And so, but I've had other friends that definitely marketed and did a lot more networking than I did, and things like that. But uh, you can just let your works speak for itself too. Does that answer your question, Leanne? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think it did answer my question, and I like what you said about, really kind of going all in with something, like with a particular approach. That has helped me when I didn't know where to go. It kind of helps say, okay, like I use acceptance and commitment therapy exclusively. Like you said, they don't know the difference, but
Mhm.
because I have direction, I think that makes me more confident and kind of,
Yeah.
get over the jitters of being new and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. It's a lot of food for thought.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. ACT is really good. It can be very
Yeah,
helpful.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Good.
Most importantly, they're getting stuff out of it, whether I
Yeah.
like it or
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Any other questions about any of these things so far? Okay. I'm going to talk super briefly about what Chrissy was asking earlier, just about like LLCs and like tax type stuff. And I will encourage you to, watch the interview with Chris Kendall. He goes into a lot more detail than I'm about to. I'm going to give you just some highlights. You can definitely talk to a lawyer about any of these things. You can definitely talk to an accountant about any of these things. Um, in terms of like becoming an LLC in Texas, since we're professionals, we're actually PLLC, so we're professional limited liability corporation, which means basically everyone in Texas that takes an exam, some type of state exam, lawyers, doctors, everybody is a PLLC. So everyone that has to take some type of state regulated exam is a professional LLC. So that's the first thing. That's what the state will recognize. It costs about $300 to get an LLC. You basically just pick a name and make sure that no one else has that name. You file the paperwork and you can become an LLC. You can actually get a free tax ID number too. Those are free. That you can get that from the IRS. They'll just give you one. I've had the same one for a long time. you can do that too. I would suggest doing that versus giving out your social security number or driver's license. You can use that instead. So that's actually pretty easy and straightforward. The other part that I think is something to think about is, in general, when you work for a lot of the practices, a lot of the times you're going to be a contracted worker, so you're going to be a 1099 self-employed person. And there's a big difference between being self-employed and full-time. A couple of the big differences are, if you're self-employed, then whatever money you make, you're obviously you have to pay the taxes and the Social Security and the Medicare on it fully. If you're full-time, the company pays for half of that FICA, and you would pay for the other half. The other thing that happens if you're self-employed, you pay a self-employment tax on top of that. So it's usually about 15%. And so those are just things to think about. And these are the areas that I just didn't know about and I didn't think about. If you work as a contractor at a site and you make 60%, I'm going to use $100. You make $60 per client. Okay. You get taxed on that, however much that ends up being per quarter. You get taxed on that just income tax wise, which let's say it's 12% or 10%. You also pay FICA, which is 15%. Then you also pay the self-employment tax of 15%. Okay, that's really important to remember, because when you start filing taxes and you haven't paid, let's say you didn't pay any of those things quarterly, let's say you're going to pay them all at the end of the year. That's a pretty big tax bill at the end of the year. Okay, so these are just some things to think about. This is why I would suggest that you find a CPA. There's actually more CPAs now working with mental health providers. They can kind of walk you through some of the things I'm talking about. Now, the question is always, well, is there a way I can be self-employed even, but not, have to pay the self-employment tax or, so many of the higher taxes? So there is a way to do that, and that is to incorporate yourself. I actually have what's called an S corp. So I pay taxes on what I claim I make. So I'm gonna make these numbers up just to keep it simple. As a marriage and family therapist, on average, our annual salary, let's say, is $60,000. It's probably maybe a little less than that, maybe a little bit more depending on where you live. Let's say it's $60,000. As an S corp person, I own my own company, right? My own corporation. And this is what a lot of corporations do anyway. What I'm telling you right now, this is just something that people do. It's legal. You can talk to a tax person to kind of walk you through it, but you would only pay taxes on that 60,000. So if I make 90,000, I'm only paying taxes on 60. I'm not paying taxes on the other 30. Okay, and that's kind of what corporations do. That's what a lot of doctors do. They incorporate themselves. Lawyers do the same thing. So becoming incorporated actually can save you. The self-employment tax is lower. You still pay the same. Everyone pays the same FICA tax, the Social Security, Medicare. Everyone pays the 15%. That's always the same. That'll never change. I've had a CPA firm for like 10 years now, and so they do all my filing for me, and kind of, if I have questions, I call them and ask them. So you can always just, try to find people to help you walk through that. Now, everything I'm telling you right now, I'm talking about, this is at a very high level of information. That interview I did with Chris gets pretty specific and kind of into the weeds. And I'm sure that there's probably some changes that have happened in the tax code that maybe I'm not even aware of, but that's why I have a CPA that kind of knows about those things and can kind of walk through those things. And yes, there's certain, like if you work from home, you can take certain deductions. I mean, you can take certain deductions anyway as a small business owner, but small business wise, those are just things to think about, because as you start to make money, basically you're a business and you're going to have to pay some type of tax because of the money that you make. In other words, you can't just make full profit and not pay tax on it. That's actually tax evasion, and that's probably not something you should be involved in. I'm not saying that some people don't try to get away with that, because I know some people that have tried to get away with making money and not claiming it on their taxes, but I wouldn't suggest doing that. It's not super smart to do. So again, I'm talking about this at a super high level, but that's actually a pretty common way that people go about. It's just creating their own company and becoming an S corp or incorporated. That's actually very common now. And I've heard different prices for becoming incorporated. I've heard $500. I've heard $2,000. I think it just depends on who you use and what they charge or don't charge. You can do it yourself too, but it is partly a legal process that you go through. And if you do that, you actually get a different tax ID number for that corporation. And so for me, like for example, I'm Chris Bedard P LLC. That's my company and that's my S corp. So anything I do therapy wise, I separate everything. So I have a different phone number, I have a different email account, I have different bank accounts, I have different credit cards if I use those. Every single thing is separate from my personal. Now, why would we first of all have an LLC? The first reason is if you're a sole proprietor, which you can be, as you start out, you can be just a sole proprietor. That gives you no veil of protection if something happens and you get sued, because they can walk right through that and sue you personally as well. An LLC as a company at least gives you a veil of protection from your personal assets. An S corp gives you another veil of protection from your personal assets. In other words, someone can't, like I don't even have my business account inside the same bank as I have in my personal account. Like I separate every single thing out. Every single thing is totally separated or separate from my business, and my personal are totally separate. Like even this Zoom here, I won't use this Zoom account for any personal, like during COVID, for example, we did a big thing with my family. We were all spread out. I didn't even use this Zoom account for that. Like I do everything separate. I keep it all separate. I actually have a coaching business that's also separate from everything too. I mean, technically, if you wanted to have a bunch of different companies, you can. I mean, you can do as many as you want, but my suggestion is always talk to a CPA. And if you need to have legal advice, always talk to a lawyer. Now, one of the things you guys will figure out about, like in terms of legal advice, is if you join an association, even as a student, those associations a lot of times give free legal advice for like certain things. And when you get your own malpractice insurance, those companies will actually also offer some free legal advice as well. So you can have some legal advice with different people. But I would just suggest trying to find people that you can talk to, especially a CPA. That's really going to help you a lot. I'm really just strictly talking about the business side of counseling. I just think it's helpful to find someone. And there's tons of different choices out there that you can find. Let me take a step back for a second. Do you have any question about that? Any comment, any question? Because again, I think I go through this really quickly. I'm the greatest communicator that's ever communicated. Okay, good. All right. The only other couple of things I was going to mention tonight, one is about just insurance in terms of like getting paneled with insurance. As an associate, you can't get paneled with insurance. There's starting to be there's a movement right now for supervisors to panel some of their supervisees with insurance. That's actually really new, like this year, new. Some supervisors will do that. So that's a little bit of something that's different. But when you get your full license and you think maybe I want to be on an insurance panel, different panels take different amounts of time to get paneled with them. There's an application process that you go through. Blue Cross Blue Shield is probably the largest provider in this area. I think it's around 80% of the folks in this area at Blue Cross Blue Shield. So Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, those are probably the biggest providers in our area, DFW, and in Texas in general. And so they all have kind of a different process that you go through to get paneled with them. All ends in a contract that you sign with them, and inside that contract, they give you what your reimbursement rate is with them. That will be totally different than your self-pay rate. So let's say my self-pay rate's $175. I've got a contract with United. Their individual counseling session reimbursement rate's $110. Now, what I'm about to say is really crazy. Them, Blue Cross, Aetna, and Cigna all pay less for couples sessions. They pay about 75 or 78 for couples sessions, which is a little weird, but they all do that. So when you go through paneling with an insurance company, you're actually, when you sign the contract, you're saying, hey, I will accept whatever this reimbursement rate is, whether it's $85 or $110 or $60 or whatever it is. And it just depends on the service that you're providing with them. Yeah.
What's your percentage of self-pay and insurance?
So I have probably right now 100% insurance people, but I only have like 3 clients, and I actually use a third party called Headway that does all my insurance credentialing because I got tired of messing with them. So Headway pays me, and then they get reimbursed from the insurance company. When I first started, I was only self-pay. That just takes longer to build. If you want to build a practice quick, usually use insurance. If you don't care how long it takes you, you can do self-pay. It's really up to you. But when you panel with an insurance company, you're also advertised through that insurance company too, so you can get more clients that way. So there's some pros and cons to it. But if you charge, like I said, if I charge 175 and I'm getting paid 78 for working with a couple, I got to see 2 couples for every 1 self-pay. So it's just kind of up to you, kind of how you do it. And there's some frustrating things, like I just got a letter from United saying that a couple that I worked with like way back in the summer, in the late spring, apparently weren't covered by United at the time, even though they paid me at the time. They were technically under Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now United wants all that money back. It's like $400. So you do have to deal with stupid stuff like that too. So that actually would get passed on to my clients. Which I actually just eat that usually and take it as a loss, but because it's kind of annoying. But so there's good things about insurance and bad things. The good things is convenient to your clients. If clients have insurance, they're going to want to use it. They're not going to want to pay self-pay. That's just kind of the long and short of it. Now, the one thing that I do now is I'm licensed in multiple states, and I don't take insurance in every state. So in the states I don't take insurance, they pay the private pay rate. But I only have one of those clients right now.
I'm questioning, we are not eligible for NCC status, correct? Because of it's not KCREP.
I don't think that matters, not in Texas.
But I meant just like, and Texas doesn't share, like we don't have any shared like affiliations with other states like some states do, correct? So like when we're licensed in Texas, that's it. If we wanted.
Well, there's no reciprocity in any state right now, unless you're a psychologist.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
The KCREP doesn't matter in Texas.
Okay.
I don't know how much it's going to matter moving forward. I know plenty of people that didn't go to KCREP programs that are licensed in like 10 states. Now there's probably going to be some reciprocity in some states, like the LMFT world, they're working on reciprocity. I know that. The LPC world is a little different. The reason why is because right now every state has different rules. So you have to jump through their hoops to become licensed in those states. The biggest hoop is the time that you've had your license. Most states, you have to have at least 3 years before you can apply to that state. Not every state, but most states.
Okay.
So unless you're a psychologist, then there's reciprocity with, I think it's 35 states now. I can't remember exactly. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It was confusing just studying for the NCE, and they were talking about KCREP and NCC stuff and all that, and it was confusing.
So the KCREP question we get a lot at Amerton. We decided not to go that direction because most of our students are in Texas and stay in Texas, so it's not going to matter that much. It's not going to matter at all in Texas because Texas is kind of its own independent setup and system. So there's not really a worry about it. Now, keeping in mind that if we're talking about KCREP, that doesn't apply to LMFT. That's a totally different association. COAMPTA is the accrediting association for LMFT. So we just didn't go that direction. To be honest with you, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody at all. Any other questions about any of those things? I know this is boring.
Have you ever heard of someone asking for a retainer for an organization? Like, hey, organization, you pay me $500 a month and I'll give your people a special rate.
Sure, you can do that.
Have you seen that to be effective?
I mean, it depends on what the return on investment is, right? Like what are they getting, right? So if you can show return on investment to someone, like right now, I could show. I just read a Fortune or Inc. article that said mental health providers have saved Fortune 500 companies around $30 billion in helping clients not miss work and not be too stressed and not take family leave. I mean, so we do have a lot to offer if you can show a company or an organization, hey, here's what I offer and here's the return on investment, right? So I can say, hey, if I can work with your, like, for example, if I work with a company, let's say there's 20 people in your company and, you pay for 10 sessions a piece for each employee. We sign a contract and you're available for any 20 people to come. I mean, they pay that regardless if people come or not. But then those people come and they actually have productions better, their morale's better. I mean, you're showing a return on investment. So this is it's a business question really, more than just a mental health question. Because if you can show return on investment to people, like any idea you can come up with that also shows people that's valuable, then I think you can sell it. Because you're selling it too, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just didn't know if it like anyone was actually doing that and you were seeing therapists being successful doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I work for a company that does that, an EAP company. That's exactly what they do. They sell it. I work with people in whatever tech company you can think of, I'll probably work with them. And that's exactly what this company does. Like Teladoc is another one. Those big, like BetterHelp, not really. Teladoc, Spring Health is another one. There's just, this is happening. So yeah, this is what I was saying about being entrepreneurial. If you can think of it and sell it, yeah, do it. I wish I was smart enough 10 years ago to think about, employee assistance programs and offering and creating a company of providers that could provide mental health services for, different companies where every employee gets like 8 sessions free and the company pays for it. I mean, that'd be awesome. Wish I'd have thought about that. That's a great idea. But it's happening now all over the place. So yeah, I love the idea. I love it. Any other questions?
I have a really specific question, so I'll wait till everyone else leaves if that's okay.
Sure. So everybody leave. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. That's all I was going to talk about tonight in terms of that, just that topic. So, and that doesn't mean you only have to ask questions now. You can ask questions anytime. And like I said, in terms of information, there's lots of information about what it looks like to be, a self-employed person versus a W-2 full-time employee. I mean, there's lots of information out there now, tax implications, all those things, salary. People sometimes ask, like, how do you set your rate? It really depends on what you think you're worth. And, usually we should set our rate higher than we think we should because we're usually worth more than we think, most of the time. And so that's kind of something that you can kind of think through. One easy way to figure out rates is just go on Psychology Today and look in your area and kind of see what people charge. You can do it that way too. I mean, there's multiple ways to kind of figure that type of stuff out. If you guys can find practices or clinics that you can get your supervision done in and not have to pay, that's even better. That's really helpful, I would say. Yeah. Any questions about anything? Any questions about the class? All right, then we're done. That's it. Next week when we meet, I'm going to do a couple of very specific things as we kind of close down the semester. Um, I usually do a kind of like a milestone kind of sending off with everybody. We'll do that next week. It usually takes about an hour to do. And obviously, if you have questions, you can let me know. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week and a good night, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.